what the research shows us is that we need churches that are ready, able to have places of connection and relationship with these young people.
Welcome back to another episode of Leadership 360. I'm excited to have a friend. Most of the people we've had so far have been friends, but I consider Christian a good friend. Pastor Christian Ponciano is the Director for Youth and Young Adult Ministries here at the Texas Conference. Christian, thank you for coming on Leadership 360. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes over the next little while. So share with us a little bit of your story, how you ended up becoming the Youth and Young Adult Director for the Texas Conference.
So I've been in Texas Conference for a couple of years now. I began my ministry as a local hire in Indiana. And from there, I got picked up by the Texas Conference. As I've always been very focused on youth ministries. From my young age, I've always been involved in what was club ministries. And then as I grew in leadership in the church, became an area coordinator for my home conference, and always had that focus on youth ministries. When I went to seminary, I did my master's with a emphasis on youth ministries. And so it's always been kind of the lane that I have followed. So I got hired in the Texas Conference as a youth pastor, then became a district pastor for a couple of years. And now here I am. God has given me that opportunity to be leading this department. And it's, I'll be honest, it's a dream job for me personally. Not that it was an endeavor. Oh, I'm gonna be a youth director once, but it's stuff that you always think about. Like, man, if this would come around, it would be something that I would love.
You look back and you see how God was preparing you for
every step of the way. It's crazy. Every step of the way.
So before we talk about what you do and what your department does, got to give a shout out. You're not a native Texan.
I'm not.
We talk about where you're from because I think that explains a lot about Christian Ponciano once we hear where you're from.
Yeah, no, I am not a native Texan. I am originally from the Dominican Republic. I migrated with my family at the age of 16 to New York City. And then I consider myself a New Yorker. From there, since the age of 16 all the way to the age of, I want to say 25, I find myself in New York City.
And for those of us who get to interact with you on a regular basis, you act like a New Yorker. Yeah, you act like a New Yorker.
It's kind of hard, man. It just I came into this country not knowing any English, not having any type of cultural perception of anything. It's just I came as a migrant, and then I go into high school. To a junior year in high school in New York, and that's where then everything is formed. At that age, I was almost like a sponge, absorbing everything around me because I wanted to fit. You know what I mean? I understood I was a migrant here, and I am like, man, I'm gonna be the best out of this, and I want to fit. I want to learn the language. I want to learn the ways, and so man, I absorbed it all, and that's the kind of, it shows.
So you're a New Yorker for Dominican,
right.
Even though you spent most of your growing up years in the Dominican Republic,
right.
You're New York. I consider you a New Yorker.
Right. And even when I go there, I consider it home. It's home. It's when people ask me, oh, New York, I'm like, yeah, that's home. That's where every time I go back, it's like I never left type of situation. It's kind of in my blood, and I love the people, but the busyness of the city, and there comes a point that you're like, yeah, this is probably not what I want for the rest of my life.
I'm sure.
And so me and my wife is from the Bronx. She is a born and raised New Yorker. So both of us, we look back and we're like, yeah, nah, New York is, yeah.
Little too much. It was a great
Yeah.
place to grow up and live, but
Yeah.
now to raise kids and all. And all that.
Man, Texas is fantastic. I love it here, man. There's parking in the streets. There are big streets. It's beautiful. The people are so kind. Love Texas. I am so glad God has brought us in this season of ministry here.
Texas is a great place to live, great place to work. The conference is a great place to
Fantastic,
to do ministry in.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about youth and young adult ministry. That's what your department covers. But give us a little bit of specifics. That's a very broad swath of ministry, youth and young adult. What are some specific areas that your department covers?
So we are very, as you mentioned, we're very broad because we cover from adventure age, where they're little, to all the way young adults, which that number keeps on changing. What is a young adult, and when are you done with being a young adult? So that number keeps fluctuating. But to be safe, I would say that we cover anywhere from adventure age all the way to 35.
Wow.
That's the cutoff.
So that's a 30-year gap.
It's a huge gap, man. And so we have to look at that huge entire population and not only provide resources for them, but also provide programs that would facilitate their Christianity.
Sure.
Right? And their continuance in this big, great Advent movement.
Sure.
That's basically the focus where we're at, as well as evangelism, because we also, a huge part of what we do in all of those areas is also evangelism, and bringing, and that's a word, if you're not Adventist, that word means bringing the gospel to non-Christian people. And that is also part of what we do.
So you have an associate?
I do. Pastor Olga.
I'm going to say talk for a minute. She was appointed a couple of months ago. So talk a little bit about Pastor Olga.
Pastor Olga is fantastic. She's coming to us from the Central Texas area, specifically Killeen. She's been a pastor for a while here in Texas. She loves young people. She has all of these amazing ideas. She is going to be leading summer camps specifically. Okay. So the way that our department is broken down is I, as the director, I oversee the whole thing, but my main focus is club ministries and youth. In other words, non-club affiliated young people.
Okay, gotcha.
So that, and if you're not Adventist, what club ministries is Pathfinders, Adventures, and Master Guides, which are these uniform gatherings and these uniform groups of people in which we promote the development of humans in physical, mental, and spiritual ways. And so with that, I focus, that's the main part. And then we have non-club affiliated youth ministries, which are our Adventist societies, Adventist youth societies in the churches, and also our youth Sabbath school. That is something that we have recently began to develop here in the Texas Conference, a really hyper focus on our youth Sabbath schools, which are the basically those teen years, not the Sabbath school for children, but the Sabbath school for our juniors, our teens.
Gotcha.
And that's basically what I do. And then Pastor Olga is focusing on the young adult side of things.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to throw a couple of terms here. ACF, Adventist Christian Fellowship. That is our gathering of Adventist young people in public universities. And
so like the University of Texas,
that's
and
right.
Austin,
A&M.
Right, gotcha.
And that is a big movement.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big movement here in Texas. We love pouring into our young adults that are in these public universities, and so she oversees that. Also, part of our department in the focus with young adults is the AYP. Adventist Young Professionals, and she also oversees that. And ultimately, we deal with the Growing Together curriculum as well, which some people might know it as the Growing Young.
Sure.
But in the Adventist world, we have taken this idea of growing together.
Gotcha.
And so Pastor Olga sees that, and then on top of that, her main bread and butter though is summer camp.
Which that happens every summer, obviously. Summer camp.
Every summer. That's right.
At Lake Whitney Ranch.
That's right.
For that goes. I was going to say it goes from the ages of.
So basically, it goes from our cubs, which are like the younger kids, all the way to young adult, right? So again, we cover almost the same swath of population, but in a summer camp setting, which is a great place to foster relationships and Christianity and to bring our young people to a place outside of everything that they do, so that they can get together and get with God.
So we've got all of these programs and opportunities for our youth and our young adults in our churches, but the reality is that in many of our churches, we're losing youth and young adults.
That's right.
You can go many places in the Texas Conference as well as throughout the North American Division.
That's right.
Where churches have very few, if any, youth or young adult.
Absolutely.
Why is it that we're losing our youth and young adult? What is it that seems to be some of the catalysts to, they hit the high school age or hit the college age, that they decide that they leave the church? What are some reasons behind that?
Man, that in itself is a conversation for months.
Sure.
But this is a very sad fact, but is something that is happening, as you have already stated. So this is the idea. I can give you a million reasons why this is happening, but I believe that ultimately it boils down, and research shows us this. It ultimately boils down to the relationships that are happening or not happening at the local church.
Gotcha.
See, this is the thing, Tom. We have this idea that in order for us to have more young people or be more appealing to young people, we need to have more programs, more stuff, more busyness, more keep them busy. Come up with anything.
Sure.
Lock-ins and pizza nights. And I don't know, we don't even know what an AY program is, but let's just put one on in our church so that I know our young people have something to do. Let's do our Vespers. Why? We don't know, just for young people. And this is the thing. We have focused so much into doing stuff that we have been remiss in having relationships.
Gotcha.
Building relationships. So that is, I would say, the main reason why we're having this bleeding.
So what you're saying is a kid may grow up in the church, have all of these different be Adventure, Pathfinder, do use Sabbath School, all of that. But if they're not connected, if they don't have a relationship with the people in the church,
that's right,
then they get to a point where they can make that decision because, kids growing up, mom and dad usually say, hey, you go to church, but then you get to college, all of a sudden that freedom comes.
That's right.
And they're like, okay, we have no relationships in the church, we're out.
Right. And that's one thing. And the other thing that we see is that they might be very engaged throughout the curriculum because, and I always tell this to my Adventist folks. I'm like, man, we don't need more curriculum because we have a fantastic curriculum. Man, the club ministries curriculum is huge and it has so much. So we don't need more curriculum. What we need is more relationships in this. You will see the kids very engaged, Adventures, Pathfinders, Master Guide might be a hit or miss, but they're still engaged in that age. They get to that college age, and it's like they drop off the map. It's a black hole. They just drop off the map because oftentimes there is not an intentionality in continuing the relationship by the local place where they are. So what happens is that if I go away to school, the church says, hey, whatever, they went away. Little Timmy went away and that's it. Okay, see you in 4 years. If we see you, if not, whatever. Little Timmy's over there. And naturally, if you don't have a place to call home for your spirituality, it's going to fade away.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? And so that's what we are at the point, at the crux of it is a relationship, and how do we continue that relationship? And within that is building discipleship that is based on relationships. You see what I'm saying? So that's where I would say we're having a lot of that drop off.
So it brings me to you. Great segue into something I want to explore. So again, a lot of our churches are saying, look, we don't have the resources. We don't have a youth pastor like some of these bigger churches. We really want to reach out to youth and young adults. We either want to attract them and have them, or we want to keep them.
Right.
As we talk to leaders, because this is who we're talking to in this podcast, what are some ways they can connect with and keep, and I use that word, in quotation marks, or attract youth and young adult to their churches?
Yeah. So that is a great point that you bring, because again, we have gotten into the idea, Tom, that we need to have a youth church.
Right.
So we need to have a youth church. And what does a youth church looks like? It looks like having a bunch of color lights. It looks like having a bunch of fog machines. It looks like having a drum set on stage and a fantastic youth pastor that can preach in jeans and speak
skinny
to
jeans.
Skinny. They got to be skinny and a denim jacket.
Yeah,
if it's
right.
you got to have the denim jacket. So it's got to look like that. And what research has shown us is that that's absolutely not the reality. I mean, that appeals to a particular section. And if you have the opportunity to do that, go ahead and do it. But our average church doesn't have the resource to do that. So what research shows us is that that's not what attracts the young people, and that's not what is absolutely needed to keep the young people. What the research shows us is that we need churches that are ready, able to have places of connection and relationship with these young people. In other words, if I'm a church right now, I'm a mid-sized church here in Texas, and I want to, single pastor district church, and I want to attract more young people. I'm going to focus in creating an environment in which those relationships are fostered and habilitated with these young people. See what I'm saying? That's what I'm going to focus on. And what does that look like?
There you go. You just answered my question. What does it look like in?
And that's it. What that looks like is not this rigidity in the churches of, and this is was sad. Oftentimes we would put traditions and ways, and I'm getting into certain territory here that always itches on that, it makes us kind of like
you cringe a little bit,
a little tighten up a little bit, but it's sad to see that many times we are so focused on keeping certain traditions or certain modalities of doing things that we would sacrifice the relationships that could be had in these churches. What does a church that is ready to have relationships with the young people looks like? It's a church that is willing to not only place them in leadership roles, but mentor them through the leadership process. So we and I encounter this all the time. Yeah, Pastor, no, we're ready for young people and we want them in leadership. But what happens is like, hey, Mary, you are 23, young professional. You just came out of college and now you're coming into this church. We want you. We love you here. Here, you're going to be the children's department director. You're going to be the youth director, and you're also going to help us in treasury. There you have it. Thank you so much for being part of our church. What?
Right.
You know what's going to happen with Mary? Mary's going to be like, no way. I got a life. Plus, who told you that this is what I want to do?
Right.
Number one. And number three, I don't even know how to do this. Right. But this is what's happening. The churches are eager to have the young blood and give them the leadership. But the transition on how that happening is horrible.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Or and on the other hand, too, what I've seen in some churches is we've bought into, and I heard this when I was a kid, the youth are our future.
Yeah,
And the reality is our youth are our present.
The youth is now.
Because if our youth are not involved in the church right now, the moment that they have the freedom,
Yeah.
they're out.
Yeah.
Because there is so many other things that they could be doing,
Yeah.
and they don't have, good, bad, or indifferent, they don't have the loyalty to the church that someone of my generation or an older generation had, that they were going to the church just because they were Seventh-day Adventists in this.
Right.
Youth today, young adults today will say, no, that's not for me. I can find my spirituality. I can find, my experience in community in other places.
Yeah.
And so we've got to get over this fallacy that the youth are the future of our church. They are the present. And one of the things, I'll tell you this, one of the things that kept me in the church, beside wanting to become a pastor, was I had a church that I was involved with as a kid.
Right.
I was doing scripture reading. And that's one of the reasons why I stayed in the church.
Right.
But that is not the experience with many of our churches
Absolutely.
across the North American division.
Right.
And so they've got to be open to, here, we're going to put you in a position to succeed
Right.
using your spiritual gifts. And that's a whole different conversation.
That's right.
And we're gonna empower you.
Right.
And we're also gonna allow you to make the mistakes.
Right.
And we're gonna be right there alongside of you, helping you.
You hit it right in the point. That is another problem that we're having, and the reason why our young people are also becoming detached. I hate using the phrase leaving the church.
Absolutely.
They're just becoming detached. They're becoming detached. And one of the reasons why is because at some point they have felt this is not their church. This is not theirs. This is my parents' church. This is my grandparents' church. This is the pastor's church. This is the deacon's church. This is the elder's church. This is not my church. I have no ownership of this.
Right.
In every church I go, that's one of the things that I always say. It's like this is their church, and they need to understand that. And I tell my young people when I talk to them, this is yours. But there is no sense of ownership if I'm not involved at the different levels of it. You see, and so when I look at the generation now and I say, oh, look how cute, this is the future of our church. You're putting that mentality into the generations, across the generations, that one day you would. No, this is now yours. Right. And that phrase, our young people are the church.
Right.
It's very important, but we need to bring it onto them and have our young people understand that.
And we as older members of the church have to be willing to let go of the power.
Absolutely.
The the say in terms of, because my kids do things very differently than I do them.
Absolutely.
Partly because of the generation, partly because of their age.
Right.
And so we as adults, older adults, we've got to be able to let go of some of that power, some of that say, and say, you know what, that may not be the way that I do things. But praise God, they're using their gifts, and they're here in their church. They have bought into that this is
and
their
that
church.
is part of the problem, is the fear of letting go into the hands of the younger generations, because they are going to do things differently, or they are going to destroy the traditions. And again, it's not like you just let it run. It's not like you just be like, hey, Jimmy, here, do whatever you want with the church.
Exactly.
See, this is where the mentorship goes. And then at the end, when we are fostering those relationships, and little Jimmy is being mentored by Elder Deacon Bob, right? And they have a relationship. They have a relationship. Elder Deacon Bob is showing little Jimmy how things and why things are done this way. And yes, our younger generations, are one of the things that are classic with our younger generations, specifically Gen Z. You're going to see them always asking, but why?
Yeah.
Wait,
That's true.
Why are we doing this? Elder Deacon Bob, well, why do we Why do we gather the offerings this way when it could be a much more efficient way of done? What can we try this? See, in that right there, if you have young people asking those questions, that means they're interested. And part of us being welcoming churches to young people is saying, you know what, little Johnny, that we can, let's think about that. That could work. You know, I mean, we've never done it that way, but okay, let's draw it out. Let's see, and tell me why you think this will be more effective, and seriously weigh it out and see. Yeah. Hey, listen, guys, it's conventional. We haven't done it this way, but does it really break the rules? Does it really make God mad if we pick up offering this way instead of that? You see what I'm saying? So part of being churches ready to receive those relationships is being churches that are welcoming towards that variance of ideas and thoughts. But what's the problem, Tom? Our churches are not ready.
Right.
Most of the churches are.
And again, then the question's always asked, well, why are we losing our people? Well, why are we losing our kids and our young? Because we're not ready.
Right.
Let me transition a little bit to adventurers and pathfinders.
Yeah.
One of the things I've realized when we came to Texas 13 years ago is Texas churches take pathfinders and adventurers seriously. I mean, we're going to go to Gillette in a few short months, and we're going to make up probably a 10%
about 10%
of the attendees.
Yeah.
And I go to churches that you would never think would have adventurer or pathfinder, and they do. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I want you to talk a little bit about this, is that some of our most successful Pathfinder and Adventurer clubs are made up of kids not only from the local church, but made up of the kids from the local community, kids who are not Seventh-day Adventists.
Yeah.
How can our adventurers and pathfinders, our club ministries, how can they be evangelistic using those two, using the conduit of adventurers and pathfinders in the local church?
I could talk about that. Look, Tom. This is the thing. Why is Adventures and Pathfinders and Master Guides such a successful tool for our ministries? Why is it? Again, it all boils down to relationships.
That's right.
I mean, listen, you find a kid, non-affiliated, non-religion affiliated, and you bring him to a place where you have not only relationships happening with people of like age, with Tommy, right? That you brought from the neighborhood, and he's meeting friends of the same age group. But wait, there's more. You also have counselors that are a little older. These are now teenagers and young adults. And now Tommy is having relationships not only with kids his age, but also with counselors that are older than him, not too far off, but older. But then what happens? That you have your club leadership, right? That are usually older folks that have had years of experience and tried and true members of the church community. And so what happens is that now little Tommy is being exposed to all of this cross-generational relationship where he is learning from Brother Bob that is a deacon, but also is a longtime Pathfinder leader, and he is showing his skills, his mentorship. He sees how Brother Bob cares so much for the young people and how he's passing down the wisdom by way of stories. We go camping with Brother Bob, and man, I'm learning so much from Brother Bob. And then my counselor is with me in my own unit, in my tent, and we having these deep conversations that are happening right there in my tent. And man, I'm going through this and I'm going through that, and life is so hard, and school is such a problem. And the counselor is saying, hey, yeah, when I was going through that not too long ago, this is how I went through it. And then with the peers, with the kids, and it's like, man, I'm in here and I'm having fun. Yeah, me too. And all of that cross-generational relationship, it's key to not only keeping, but attracting. Because the usual, I don't know if you have seen this, but the usual out there is silos, people in silos. Our society is very individualistic. We live in a very individualistic American society. You're your own, you do your own, you have your own. And what we have is a ton of people suffering because they're alone. They have no relationships. They're just standalone people. And we saw this during the pandemic.
Right.
Man, how much did that affect people? And it's hard to get meaningful relationships out there. So you bring them into a place where the relationships are just happening and flourishing, and we doing all of this camping together. Not only that, Tom, but our club ministry's curriculum is top to teach the gospel and the Bible to these kids. Right. You know, and I know that there's a certain section of the church that thinks that all we do is tie little knots and wear little scarves and move around like little pathfinders. You know that movie Up? That's the little kid going and trying to get his badge, and that's what we think. But it's far. That's a minute little thing of what we do. Man, we preaching the gospel in every step, and these kids are learning how to read scripture and how to familiarize themselves with scripture and how to use a concordance and how to have a devotional life. We are building the spiritual disciplines into our young people while having relationships. Man, it doesn't get any better than that.
So what I hear you saying is we've talked the last number of minutes about youth and young adult ministry.
Yeah.
If I were to walk away with a word, that if I'm a leader in a local church, whether it's a big church, whether it's a small church, the word when it comes to youth and young adult ministry is relationship.
That is it.
All these other things serve as conduits. All these other things serve as ways to connect.
That's right.
With our kids and with our young adults.
That's right.
But at the end of the day,
that's right.
Relationships it's where it's at.
That's it. And I'm gonna tell you something, Tom. And not every church, every leader that is listening to us right now, I understand that might not be in a church that has the resources to have an adventure club, a Pathfinder club, a Master Guide club. I get it. But what does every single church have? A place where relationships can happen. Exactly. And again, these things will facilitate the intergenerational relationships. But if your church doesn't have it, you can still be intentional about this. You can still be intentional. Matter of fact, I want to mention this. There is a Barna came up with this research, and they basically they published an article saying, this is the title of the article, strong relationships within the church add to resilient faith in young adults. Now, this is in young adults, but if you're building those relationships from the moment that they are kids, children, infants, man, we're going to have such a strong group of disciples, right? And not only would you attract them, you would keep them, you would develop them, your church will continue to grow, but it's all about those relationships. You see what I'm saying? And the research is there to show it. At the end of the road, you don't have to be that modern church. You don't have to have praise and worship with an electric guitar. You can still sing hymns and have a traditional experience in worship, but have meaningful relationships and be a church that is ready to welcome that. And you will see how young people would be glad to be there.
And I'm loving the fact they came out of our conversation organically is that the takeaway, because we always do a takeaway of, okay, if there's one thing to remember through this whole podcast, is be willing to develop relationships.
That's it.
And the scary part with relationships is they take time, energy, and effort, and some vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And not every relationship is going to work out. Not every kid's going to track with you.
That's right.
But that willingness to say, hey, Bobby, Susie, whatever, I'm interested in you.
That's right.
Because you're a child of God and that God has put you in my sphere of influence, and I'm going to pour into you.
Exactly.
And love you and care for you because you're a brother and sister in Christ.
Right. Yeah.
And it seems so easy. And that I guess for me is the head scratcher with all of this is it seems so easy, but in many places it's not being done. We're seeing the consequences.
It's because it's so hard, Tom. This is the proverbial easier said than done.
Sure.
This is so hard to do because that vulnerability to say, Lil Zuzi, we don't have it right. We don't have it right. We've been doing it for the past 50 years this way, but we don't have it. We don't have it all right. Man, it's like it puts a dent on your armor that you've had as a fifth generation church elder. That it's difficult. And here it goes.
So bottom line is, I mean, of relationships, but you're spot on.
Yeah,
it is easier said than done.
Absolutely. It's so, and that's where the rubber meets the road. Until we have these churches that are willing to have these relationships and take the load that comes with them.
Right.
Because again, every church loves the idea of these, Tom, but not every church is ready to deal with the burden that comes with it.
Right.
And again, that burden is not only giving a voice to Lil Timmy, and I keep referring to Lil Timmy, but it might be young adult John, right? Or to young adult John and their opinionated ideas, and having them sit on a board meeting where they would question these procedures and these things. That is the burden that comes with it. Yeah. And when we have the willingness and we make it available and intentional for them to have that space, they're going to understand that relationships matter and that their voice means something. And it's not that they're being disrespectful to you or the traditions, but that they are taken into account when they bring different ideas to the table. Right. And that is 1,000 words. That is 1,000 words for our young people.
Part of relationship, and this is kind of what hit me as we were having this conversation. Part of relationship is being heard.
Absolutely.
And our kids want to be heard.
Yes.
And want to be listened to.
Absolutely.
Man, we could cover this. We could go hours and hours and hours.
I hate that we have so little time.
But I want to get to our lightning round.
Go ahead.
Because this is where we get to know you a little bit, a little bit more. So I'm going to say short things, and I want immediate answers.
Sure.
So okay, beach or mountains?
Wow, Mount Beaches. Beach.
Do you have a favorite beach?
I do, in the Dominican Republic.
Okay, I hear the DR has a lot of beautiful
Punta
beaches.
Punta Cana is the place to go.
All right, so beach. Number 2, most used app on your phone.
Wow, Instagram.
Instagram.
Yes, Instagram.
Okay. Favorite hobby outside of ministry?
Fishing.
Fishing, yes.
Absolutely.
We've had that long conversation.
If anybody's listening to this podcast, email me if you like fishing. I would love to go fishing with you.
You've got quite the stories from your time down in the valley.
That's right.
One thing on your bucket list.
Wow. Skydive.
Skydive?
Yes.
You've not done that yet.
No.
I can see that as something you could do.
Yeah, but I don't want to. But it's in my bucket list. But it's just not my preference to just jump out of a plane. A perfectly working plane is crazy. It's demented. I don't know why people do it, but it's in my bucket list.
You want to be able to do it.
You know what I'm saying?
If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Man, this is hard.
Just pick one.
Wow. Wow. Oh my goodness. It would be fly. I would love to fly.
Fly. Why fly?
Because I would get to places faster. I would see the whole world. I would be able to do rescues as I am in the air with people falling off of buildings. I can just swoop in and get them and see the world.
I can see you with a cape.
Absolutely.
I can see you.
This would be fantastic.
Nice. Last one. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Ooh. Best piece of advice that I've ever received. Stay the course. God's got you.
Okay.
Stay the course. It's always been a tendency of mine to want to be jumpy, right? No. This is not gonna work. Hey, plan it out. Stay the course. And God's gonna do the rest,
I like that.
according to God's vision, of course. And that stems. I'm basically modifying it in English, but it came from a phrase that my dad once told me. And in Spanish, I don't know if it makes much sense to say it in Spanish, but nunca cambies de caballo cuando andas cruzando el río. In other words, don't ever switch horses when you're in the middle of the river, crossing the middle of the river. So you get the idea.
We have a complimentary euphemism like that in English.
How does it go?
Don't change horses in the middle of the stream.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
So that my dad once told me that, and he really impacted me. And it's basically stay the course.
Yeah,
stay the course. Be with it. It's going to be rocky. It's going to be turbulent, and there are going to be times where you might need to readjust direction. But stay the course. That's been the best advice that.
And what's been awesome, Christian, is having known you for a while. You've stayed the course with God, and God is using you to do some great things here at the Texas Conference.
Praise the Lord.
Thanks for coming on Leadership 360. Thank you for listening to another episode of our podcast. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button. If you want to talk to friends about it, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. The video is on our Texas Adventist YouTube page. And we're so excited that you joined us. Join us next month as we have another guest as we continue in our journey to become better leaders. Thank you so much. We'll see you next month.